Hello to everybody today, and first of all, I'm grateful for my possibility to participate in this conference on 500 years of heritage of Martin Luther and its influence on European culture and also Latvian political culture. I probably will start with an idea to think about further in your discussion. What is more determining the developments through ages? Is these personalities, or it is a concrete circumstances which surround these personalities, or maybe it's a mixture of both? And looking from that perspective and analyzing how Luther had been rising and what he left afterwards, after him, we must understand what was that age about. And I here would like to mention a number of things, what was very characteristic of those days. First of all, I think it was the new discovery in a new way of a new man. And a new different man for his or her relationship towards God, a different way than before, and also a different relationship to the previous rulers, which includes also such, for instance, questions as loyalty. Secondly, it was also the time which overlapped with huge discoveries in the world, with discovery of Americas, which among others widened again people's world and perception of the world, and at the same time gave enormous wealth arriving from captured territories across the ocean to Europe. Previously, such situation of new world discoveries which changed a perception of people about themselves and about God and about societies actually happened when Christianity or idea about Christianity started to rise, and that was the collapse, or first, let's say, the discovery of Macedonian Alexander's empire and creation of empire, and afterwards the collapse of this empire. So I see here a certain parallels also of the changes of the world. And the third, in my view, very important aspect, which at that time was shaping societies in Europe, that was the new technologies about which we speak also today. Today we speak about IT and social media. Those days it was a printing press. Printing press was very crucial to disseminate ideas, to spread them at a high speed or much higher speed than before, and also in some way it assisted two parallel things. First, the creation of different ideas. Secondly, the creation of certain homogeneity of society, because the birth of the nation is not possible without creation of certain homogeneity. The press was doing this in those days. If we are looking to Martin Luther from my perspective, from perspective of politician and perspective of political scientist, I would say that he of course saw the world in his days through the prism of religion. He was a certain reformist of religion, and he probably did not think about those consequences, what he will leave after himself. And I think it's not easy always to differentiate what was Luther and how much already was those consequences which came autonomously after him, which he initiated. Here I would like to maybe mention two sides of this perspective. One is conceptual side, another is a side of his alliances and affiliations to politics. As far as the conceptual side, just for the sake of discussion, I would like to mention a number of things. First, individualism. As Sabin and Thorson in one of the most famous political science books are arguing, actually Christianity or rise of Christianity was responsible for the creation of individual approach. As I mentioned earlier before, the collapse of empire of Alexander of Macedonia put first time a person, a human, on front of the large world, on front of the something bigger than city-state. The second impact, and I would call here the reformism of Luther as a flavor enhancer of this individualism, put it on a higher scale. And for me, it's a little bit a paradox to think about this, because on the one hand, we can say and argue from political science perspectives that Christianity created liberalism and individualism, and at the same time, Christianity and traditional life, and even Protestants themselves during the Reformation were actually fighting to strengthen the tradition and fundamentalism in many ways, and not allowing this child of Christianity, liberalism, to develop fully. Secondly, it's a question of tolerance, a concept of tolerance. Because if we want to be ironic, we can say that after the Reformation started, religious wars created a situation where Europe was facing the extinction. People were killing each other. We can read here Hobbes, we can read here Locke. And we can see that toleration came as an idea, but toleration came also as a real politics. Because rulers understood if these guys representing different beliefs in church will continue these wars, nothing much will be left. So toleration was a necessity of our lives. And this is what gave to the Western culture this very, very important idea of toleration. Secondly, we can speak about homogeneity and diversity again in the same time as a from Reformation's perspective. And on the one hand, during the religious wars, these people did not want to tolerate different opinions. But at the same time, they very soon came to conclusion that in fact loyalty can be reached also from different groups of religious minorities. So that discovery was also very important for the following centuries. Further on, a very, very important aspect which was always famous and is famous up to today. This is a question about disagreement, disobedience and resistance. And here you can see how disobedience and resistance towards Pope, towards religious rulers, actually turned also into the right to resist secular rulers later on, if these rulers are not following the path to enhance and improve the lives of the people. And in some way, if we are looking to the Latvian history, we can say that also our renaissance of our independence movement in 1980s, which was in fact led by one of reformers, Protestant Lutheran young priests in my country, was in many ways also based on this idea that you have to resist the unjust rule, the rule which doesn't take care of the opinion of public and people seriously. Of course, in Luther's time, I don't think that Luther, and I don't think that scientists will say that Luther know about all this and that he agreed about this. He actually held a very, very negative views personally, which is a negative aspect of this issue about leaders and fürsts and rulers, but at the same time, he had a great respect to the office. Maybe this is also another flavor enhancement of the former idea of Roman law. Because if we are looking at the church, which were divided in Eastern and Western churches, the Western church is different and its influence on political culture is different because it has a Roman law behind it, and it has a Reformation behind it, which again enhanced those Christian values and understandings of justice, of rule of law, and in some way not only disobedience and resistance, but also the necessity of this ruler's hierarchy. And of course, we can also agree that nation-state was created because of Reformation in certain way, because it gave a path, Reformation gave a path to the rise of national church, which was so important also here in our Baltic region. Now, if we are looking to another concept, more theological one, where I'm not such a great expert, but I still would like to speculate about two issues. One issue is evangelic love, and other issue is the justice coming out of commandments. And here, if I remember correctly, either from Luther or from his successors came this idea: if God is only with love, if God is not just, it's probably a terrible God. And in many ways I can see this also in a correspondence with another name which is almost the same as Martin Luther. It's Martin Luther King. And from his perspective, day before his assassination, he had a very, very nice sentence which I remember, and I think it's worth to mention here. Namely, true peace is not the absence of tensions. true peace is a presence of justice. So this is again this dichotomy between love and justice, peace and justice. And if we are looking to today's political perspective about, for instance, Minsk agreements or Syria, which are creating refugees or discord in the world, we can say, look, in many ways, Minsk agreement is not so much about justice. Minsk agreement is just about trying to raise tensions. And then we, in the Western world, can rest in peace because we think we did a great job. There is not anymore so much tensions. I think this is not enough if we are looking from the perspective of Protestantism. Of course, there are coming some other issues which I have no time to discuss anymore because you gave me also the time limit for my presentation. But I would like to mention this very important issue which came from Protestantism, in my understanding, and from Martin Luther, is that God is around us. It's here, it's not somewhere. We don't need intermediator to be contacted to God. And the same way it gives also to us who are, let's say, the followers of a Protestantism branch, a much more responsibility. And this was a research made by Durkheim and also by some other scientists about suicide rates, which among Protestants are much higher actually than among Catholics before. In conclusion, I would like to say that probably Martin Luther did not know how much differences he will bring to political life in Europe. He was more situative, and I don't think we should see him as something which was parahuman. I don't think so. Secondly, I think it is important to think, especially once we remember the asylum and refugee crisis in Europe, that situations can be reflected on the place. We can't find always a universal application, but acceptance of difference can go so far as it is not challenging the fundamentals. The problem is, at this moment, that in political life, in European Union and European continent, we see too less efficiency, and we see somehow a disbalance between the justice and love, and disbalance between a possibility to be different, and at the same time possibility to preserve the fundamental values to which we are all basing our political systems. And finally, just very, very small note also about maybe fashion and ethics in the Baltic region and in the Northern Europe. And I think it goes together with Martin Luther's critical approach to luxury and something which is very splendid. And here, those who are coming from this region would remember our certain obsession with so-called Latvian grey. I believe that this conference will be not a Latvian grey in an intellectual sense, and I wish you all a great discussion further on after my presentation on all these topics. In any case, 500 years of Martin Luther Reformation in Baltics and in our politics left enormous inheritance to discover. Thank you very much.